Okay, I've had exhibitions of my work, including in Living in Contrast at the 2020 ArtANKARA Contemporary Art Fair in Turkey, and I had a solo exhibition called Urban Forests at Delta House Studios in London in 2017. I had a recent solo exhibition at the Victoria Gallery and Museum in Liverpool, which ran from 2018 to 2019. That was accompanied by an exhibition catalogue which included texts by Lauren Elkin and Professor Graeme Gilloch, and was distributed by Liverpool University Press. I'll also be starting a practice-based PhD at the Slade School of Fine Art in October 2020. And the key questions in my work are: how do I use my own art practice to explore the different cities in a psycho-geographic way? How do I use my autobiographical experience of the city in a way that links them with ideas about psychogeography as explored by other artists and writers? And what do I mean by psychogeography, and what is a flaneur, and what context do I see my work fitting into with art history and in contemporary art? And how do I engage audiences with my work through exhibitions, residencies, and in talks like I'm giving now, and in other collaborative projects? How am I exploring the various qualities and the nature of painting and drawing processes in contemporary art, and what kinds of ideas am I aiming to explore that contribute to the art world? I'll talk about my work, the ideas in my work, and we'll discuss exhibitions of my work with you. In this drawing here, I wanted to show the different atmospheres caused by various pollutions in the city environment. So chose an ink colour and painted it thinly over the mapped areas, creating a transparent texture. The Shard is an iconic building in London and is also referred to as Shard of Glass and Shard London Bridge, and formerly London Bridge Tower. The Shard here represents capitalism, with the domination of central London being one of finance. The shape of the Shard is in a crucifix impression in my drawing, and is a metaphor for the environment being crucified by the harmful pollution in the city environment. In this drawing here, it's in shadow. I wanted to juxtapose the outlines of shadows of St. Paul's with two buildings in London. And I was fascinated by how streetlights affect how architectural features of buildings are seen during the day and night. For example, the glass windows could be seen as being mauve at times, and the composition is unusual, with three sections of St. Paul's and two other buildings reflected in pools of water. I have split the composition up in this way as I wanted to explore the fragmentation as being like fragments of memories people can have when navigating their ways around a city. And the shape of St. Paul's was painted from an upside down image of St. Paul's to show a sense of wonder at the sloping arches of St. Paul's as dome. I use ink a lot in my work for its fluidness and to convey the simplicity of mark making based on my montages. And the watery, translucent texture of ink has helped in trying to give my work an ephemeral feel or a transcendent moment. I began to work large scale, which has been and continues to be an important factor in terms of demonstrating my images to create a greater dynamism in terms of shapes and mark making, and gives greater scope towards compositions. And the space in this drawing is personalised by my experiences in the city with monochromes, showing a bleak atmosphere with strong, exaggerated, simplified forms, dramatic diagonal lines, and contrasting foregrounds and backgrounds. My paintings in general explore the cultivation of spaces in cities including Manchester and London, focusing on architecture and crowds, multiple viewpoints, express alienation, and flux in the jostling movement of people in urban spaces, showing the city as a dense environment for the familiar and the the unfamiliar as well. I consider how views of contemporary urban journeys and the structure of crowds, the shape and nature of crowds, such as commuters and political marches, translate into contemporary painting. And on my journeys, I explore and observe crowds in flux in spaces of temporary transit, such as railway stations and in streets, and organic crowd forms flit in and out of each other, juxtaposed with man-made architecture. I'm fascinated by iconic buildings such as the Imperial War Museum North, which was designed by Daniel Libeskind. I noticed there the slow movement of visitors such as families and war veterans reacting to images of crowds in the exhibits, for example, soldiers in conflict. And I paint and draw the architecture as if it's closing in on the viewer, accentuated by monochromatic colour combinations, with the shape of crowds in the exhibits as a swarm, unwelcomed by some mechanistic commuters, random walkers, or orchestrated as in political marches or memorial parades. And I paint because the materiality of it resists whatever my intentions are, and it never comes out the way I plan. Hence, painting is a hugely exciting journey for me. Painting for me is like solving a puzzle where visual elements, including colours, shapes and lines, work together in coherent ways to express an idea or an emotion about combinations of things that I see, and memory and imagination. And there is an intimate connection between the artist's hand, the brush, the artist's eye and mind, and the different colours in paint. And as a starting point, I create montages using photographs I take, as well as found imagery, and they create unexpected juxtapositions and form the basis of my paintings and drawings. In this painting here, Nocturna, I reference the Imperial War Museum North, and it's quite large. It's 150 by 215 centimetres, while most of my paintings are 90 by 120 centimetres. And I invigilated exhibitions there, and I noticed the slow-moving visitors, for example, families and war veterans, reacting to images of the crowds in the exhibits. And I'm fascinated by how the aluminium cladding shows a globe shattered by conflicts caused by wars, and how Libeskind has enhanced the museum's subject matter with its sharp angles, sloping walls and leaning walls, unsettling and disorientating the visitors. In this drawing Flow, I juxtapose an image of Anish Kapoor's sculpture, which is below, which is in the 2012 Olympic Games coverage. And similarly with my drawing Flow, I've juxtaposed at the top of the drawing Anish Kapoor's steel sculpture from the 2012 Olympics with crowds on the train platform. And I was interested in the circular structures of a tunnel reverberating like elongations of different sounds. And it's really fascinating to consider geometrical intersections starting in and vanishing into dark circular structures of tunnels. These suggest dynamic rhythms, interlocking wall structures leading into each other. I place the crowd scene below as a metaphor for the feeling of how complex urban structures can seem as though they close in on you. The title in this piece, Entrancement, suggests to me how the often unnoticed sights in urban environments produce hidden wonders in terms of how water overlaps on the pavement, combining the organic and the man-made together in terms of how the building's reflected. You can get entranced by reflections in puddles on the pavement. And I painted the reflection of the building in the puddle in the centre of the drawing to invoke a surrealistic feel of the puddle being like a portal for myself to marvel at the sharp edges of the architecture of the building. This drawing, Watchers, it shows my reflection of my observation of people in urban environments, focusing on surrealistic, unexpected juxtapositions in various images through making montages that help me create narratives. The idea of the title was that I wanted the piece to directly reflect me as a flaneur, observing the city at different times of the day, morning and the early afternoon. I've juxtaposed two reflections of a shadow of myself, observing the city, living in the arc of the shadows, observing the unknown stories of people that I'll never know. And the shapes of the figures look like towers, often watched by crowds of people. Crowds of people are the watchers, and it alludes to the voyeuristic nature of society. And most people take lots of photos, and at the same time, CCTV cameras constantly monitor people's movements, for example, in shops or car parks, etc. And I wish people viewing my work to read it as being personal, looking in on my own observations. For this reason, I chose to use my immediate environment as my subject matter. The different types of architectural features is interesting. For example, the vertical shape of the skyline of Salford Quays in Manchester feels as though it's coming towards you. And I titled this painting Aerial Space, as I've juxtaposed a view of shadow figures, large and small with map features, as though the viewer was looking from above. And the ripples in the floodwater of this work on paper show the interweaving together through very expressive art making in acrylic paint, and they give a sense of emotional movement. And the juxtaposition is present in this work, ArtANKARA, combining the urban and the natural with a crowd scene of people in a state of flux, moving very fast in a station, a place of transience viewed from the inside of the tank. I'm fascinated by the very intricate formations of the natural leaves of the plants against the hard edges of the architecture, surrounding the various figures moving swiftly from one place to another. On the whole, the image presents an impression of an urban environment, which is dominated by the aquarium tank view. And each person, I often think as I paint, has their own story that I'll never know. The brushstrokes of the tank give feelings of moving, vibrating patterns, and the bright colour usage gives positive and cheerful connotations. This painting, City Pads, suggests to me how the often unnoticed sites in urban environments produce hidden wonders in terms of how water overlaps on the pavement, combining the organic and the man-made together in terms of the building reflected. And you can get entranced by lily pads in a pond. And I painted a section of the pond in the centre of the painting to invoke the actual puddle being like a portal for myself to marvel at the sharp edges. And in my painting, Waiting at the Station, I wanted to capture a feeling of unsteadiness by painting the station roof as a horizontal rather than vertical, the way in how people view objects usually. I composed the juxtaposition in the montage of Manchester Victoria Station together with two mirror images of crowds on escalators, opposite an image of a woman. I'm intrigued by the structure of the roof, swoops and swirls of gridlocked and interlocking shapes. In my painting, Sometimes Lost, I explore the structure of the metropolitan crowd walking away from the viewer and towards the viewer at the same time. And in the centre of the painting, there is a central column of the Metropolitan Cathedral in Liverpool, splaying out like a waterfall engulfing the moving figures. Recently in my work, I've been exploring the uncanny sense of simultaneous strangeness and familiarity in memories and experiences of different urban sites, linking to Sigmund Freud's essay, The Uncanny, and in The Weird and the Eerie by Mark Fisher, in how they explore the strange within the familiar and discuss perspectives of insider and of outsider, and considers montage as a form connecting to the eerie. Alter Island explores the Albert Dock with architectural structures being turned upside down, having pale and murky waters. I juxtapose a monochromatic panel in the foreground, showing features of faceless figures with the interior of Liverpool's Metropolitan Cathedral. And in Pool of Life, I'm inspired by the dream of Carl Jung about Liverpool, a city he'd never visited, in 1927. And in the dream, he saw Liverpool as a broad square, dimly illuminated by street lights, into which many streets converged. And he was drawn to the magnolia tree on an island in a centre of a pool in the street, which stood in the sunlight, and was at the same time the source of light. The aquatic panel is shown as a lingering reminder of previous rainwater having fallen before on the crowd on the right, and the warm yellow resembles hope and life in the pool. My painting Underpass, I deal with the smell of human presence in that people leave behind in a derelict graffiti-ridden space. I'm examining how forgotten, abandoned sites are subterranean realms of lost and forgotten places, like in this painting of an abandoned graffiti-ridden site. And I feel at sometimes a sense of sadness, like memories are being overwritten over time and again. And I'm intrigued by the unsettling feeling that these spaces give out. And Mikhail Foucault, a French philosopher, elaborated on a term heterotopia to describe cultural spaces that are somehow other, disturbing, contradictory, or transforming. My paintings present heterotopias, worlds within worlds, through composites of multiple in expressionistic forms and colours that mirror and yet distort the viewed image, showing urban environments as a maze of anonymity and dislocation. I show heterotopic sites of imagery reflecting time displacement, as in Pankscape, based on St Peter's Square in Manchester, a central city site with a tram station, unnerving when remembering different innocent protesters slaughtered there in the Peterloo massacre in 1819. And the image includes the sculpture of 20th century suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst, which some of you may have seen if you've been to Manchester, whose outstretched arms had associations with art history. For example, with Delacroix's Leading the People in 1830. In the Three Graces painting, I explore echoes of different times occurring simultaneously and are heterotopic, enhanced by contrasting colour and monochrome sections, as in my painting The Three Graces, based on photographs of a local park and an internet image showing three dismembered, displaced and discarded shop mannequins out of their normal context, and the detritus of commerce displaced in a man-made pastoral, connecting with traditions in art, different times of art history. And in my painting Hope Rise, I was inspired by the terrorist bomb at Manchester Arena above Victoria Station 2 years ago. I referenced the sculpture from St Anne's Square, a main city centre site in Manchester, and St Anne's Square, the site of the memorial parade and gathering. And the title refers to a feeling of hope after devastation, with bright colours almost celebratory of people's spirits collectively rising above the actual tragedy. And I use the paint thinly, thinking of referencing the idea of spirits metaphorically rising from the dead itself. And we don't usually see the world in monochromes. The world is in colour, and the different colours of the plastic balloons look artificial and surrounded by monochromes, including black and white. And I used a stippling effect with the brush to show decaying nature of emblems such as balloons, and the reflection in the background is like a mirror. The image and the balloons are not tangible, and I compounded these words together, onvic, with on from uncanny and on as an opposite. This is from Victoria Station in Manchester, and the painting is undoing associations where things seem impermanent, undone, and in flux, and some shape and brush marks breaking up, and people moving as shape fragments. I montaged a crowd scene and reflections at the bottom of the drawing itself, and used graffiti to suggest certain memories being erased, as in when spray painting. The middle viewpoint shows the city fading away as the viewer moves away, or the city is moving away. I recently had a solo exhibition at the Victoria Gallery and Museum in Liverpool. I first met the Victoria Gallery and Museum team when I attended a study day there, held by the Contemporary Art Society in February 2018. During a break, I was invited to show some images of my work, and the team were very intrigued. I was then offered a solo exhibition after I sent the curatorial team a proposal, and I showed 15 large paintings all together. And in this painting, I take the effects of COVID-19 in the industrialised landscape of Halifax, the first of my works responding to Halifax itself in preparation for a upcoming solo exhibition at Dean Clough. And I show women of South Asian backgrounds huddled together, wearing masks, with a sculptural monument, Savile Fountain, Halifax, behind them. In front of the Peace Hall, once a textile manufacturing site, now a museum. I show empathy through paint for the people in the actual situation. And I'm considering the hall's architectural design and human interactions, including diverse communities, such as the transcultural in terms of historic and contemporary migration of people from South Asia, alongside the ongoing trade in cotton and textiles between the UK and South Asia, stretching back to the British Empire. And because of the COVID lockdown, I wasn't able to travel to the Peace Hall itself. And one new area that I'll be developing in my work is the use of close-ups of different people in urban spaces, in a very similar way to Dryden Goodwin's drawings of people on the London Underground. I'm drawn to people's faces that satisfy me when mapping out their features, moving my brush or pencil over the paper, and I'm mapping an invisible map of the anonymous person's thoughts and backgrounds. And this canvas shows muted colours, reflecting a drabness of the train environment, contrasting with a monochromatic station crowd fitting in and out of each other at the same time. So that's the overview of what I'm working on at the moment. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That was really great. I should have mentioned before that if you're a host, you can mute other people. But I didn't want to interrupt you before to say that, so apologies for the sound interruption. So it's going to kick us out in 3 minutes, but it'd be really nice to do some further Q&A when we sign back in. Does anybody have any initial comments or questions for Jasmir?
I really like your paintings. I like the sometimes you have the monochrome and the colour areas, and they're often very complex paintings, aren't they? Very complex drawings that you've done. An awful lot of detail in there. And it was interesting hearing what you had to say about them. That helped me to understand the paintings. Yeah, I found your presentation really interesting.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Really what you were talking about, the uncanny, before you mentioned that word, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Sorry.
Uncanny versions of the city, and yeah, it's because I'm very interested in the use of the uncanny in terms of my actually viewing the whole city itself, you know, urban environments.
And how I really thought it was fascinating how you're talking about, you know, this idea of cities developing and having backdrops of different time and spaces, because it's something that I guess when we live and work in a city we don't necessarily notice, but when we go and visit a new city, it's almost coming with fresh eyes to see something, and I think that by distilling that and like shining a spotlight on it is really kind of strong kind of ideology to work with. And also this idea of fiction as well, because where you juxtaposing your own ideas, so it's not necessarily exactly how you see it in a photorealistic way, it's playing around with those ideas of what is real. Yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of your work.
Thank you. Yeah.
I was going to ask if you had thought about, you were talking about the latest pieces being about individuals, and whether you were thinking about the backgrounds being, you said previously that you didn't know anything about them and you kind of like that, but I wondered if you could think about what they were thinking about and kind of explore that person.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that?
I think that's quite uncanny in itself. That I don't know the person. It's that you know, and it's like I don't always know who they are or what they're thinking, and that's what makes my work have a very strange aspect to it. Uncanny memories, in the fact that I'm interested in what may have gone before in them, and that I don't always know what's gone before, and I find there's a sense of nostalgia in different sites that I navigate as well. And COVID-19 has really changed the way that people think about the city as well, and it's made me consider how people are navigating the city in a very different way now compared to before, and like how people are have to be distant from each other and navigating through urban areas. So that's playing into my work. That's going to play into my work a lot in the future.
Has anyone got any more questions or comments?
Yes, thank you very much, Jasmir. I have really enjoyed seeing your works, starting from earlier times in 2015 to today, and the contrast both in terms of individuals and the cities, and in terms of colors, and how you make them combine is really interesting and yeah, really attractive. Yeah, so it was nice. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Oscar. Okay.
That was really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's always so brilliant to hear, you know, the artists speak about their work and find out more. So thanks so much for sharing. It's really great.